On November 20th of 2011, a mother of three woke up with pure evil on her mind. After writing a couple of notes, what she would do afterwards was absolutely sickening. This is the massacre no one saw coming. Hello, friend, and welcome to High Time Crime. My name's Joel, and on here I specialize in true crime and also Photoshop design. Check out this really cool project I'm working on. It's me! But anyway, today we are going over an awful case that I'm surprised is pretty much uncovered given the circumstances. You're going to learn about a woman who had many problems and just couldn't take it anymore. Mary Ann Holder was born on June 25th of 1975 in Guilford County, North Carolina, to her mother Frances Frankie Holder, and her father isn't named, but he was never really in her life. We do know that her father had suffered from severe bipolar disorder, and he had taken himself out many years prior. The same thing actually happened to one of Mary Ann's grandparents as well. Frances's first marriage with Mary's father, though, was and overall a terrible one, and so she knew she had to leave. But after leaving, Frances would meet a man named James Holder. I don't know if they had two boys together or if James had two boys already, but to make it simple, Mary Ann had two brothers who don't come into the picture. But this entire family would move constantly and struggle with stability. It was said that Mary Ann never knew a life without any hardship. Her mother Frances, though, would try to make things seem like they weren't as bad. Mary Ann, throughout her childhood, was described as a resilient and strong-willed girl who was able to quickly adapt to change. Eventually, the family would settle in Guilford County, where Mary Ann was raised, and here she would attend McLeansville Middle School. This is where she became best friends with a classmate named Carrie Beth Hunt. Carrie also had a twin sister named Lee and an older brother named Robert Rocky Smith Jr. Rocky was about 2 years older than the girls. When Mary Ann was in high school, her and Carrie's brother Rocky had been dating for a bit, and at the age of 15, Mary Ann became pregnant. Regardless of their ages, these two decided to go through with having a child in the year 1991. Mary Ann, at 16 years old, gave birth to their first child, a daughter who they would name Christina Nicole. This couple would stay together and raise this girl, and they did it well, and they would go on to get married young. In fact, only a couple of years later, in 1994, Mary Ann, at the age of 19, would give birth to their second child, a son named Robert Dillon Smith. 2 years later, at the age of 21, Mary Ann would give birth to their third and final child, a son named Zachary Lee Smith. By then, Mary Ann and Rocky had 3 children together, and around the time that Zachary, their last child, was born, issues really started to brew to the surface. I believe the couple was already having issues prior though, and so in about 1996, right when baby Zach was born, they got divorced. Rocky would later say that they were too much alike and very young when they got married. That maturity was a huge issue in their relationship, and they needed some coaching or something. And that actually reminds me. Today's video is actually sponsored by strawberry.me. And honestly, this one was actually useful. Lately, I've been dealing with feeling stuck in my old routines and trying to stay consistent with goals, and I'm just sorting through a lot mentally right now. It's nothing too crazy, just stuff that piles up and starts to mess with your momentum. So I decided to try out strawberry.me. It's a personal coaching platform that helps you through this kind of stuff that I'm going through with an actual certified coach. First, you take a short quiz. Then they match you with someone based on what you're dealing with. And you can book a virtual session right from your phone. What honestly surprised me was about how personal it felt. My coach didn't tell me what to do. She wasn't giving me advice or a lecture. It was more like she helped me slow down and get clear on what I actually want, and also figure out what's getting in the way. Most importantly, though, she helped me figure out what to do about it. It wasn't some motivational, yada, yada, yada thing. It was grounded, it was structured, it was very helpful. The biggest difference now is that it gave me some direction, not from someone else's perspective, but from my own. And I've actually stuck with some of the stuff we've talked about, which is pretty rare for me. Now, if you've been feeling stuck or just want some support sorting things out, I'd honestly recommend it. You can take the same quiz I did and get matched with your own coach at strawberry.me/hightimecrime. The link is also in my description. The most important project you'll ever work on is you. It's kind of cheesy, but honestly, it's true. Going back to it, though, Rocky, after their divorce, would continue to support Marianne, and he said that he couldn't find anything bad to say about her, that he doesn't know anyone who could. From 1996 onward, these two would co-parent their children, and there was never any huge issues documented, and in fact, they apparently stayed close friends. After the divorce, Marianne would end up moving her and the children to the area of Pleasant Garden, which is just outside of Greensboro, North Carolina, as she retained most of the custody. Marianne worked hard to support 3 young children, and one job she held was as an office assistant. She held many other part-time or temporary jobs. Marianne also began to be very active in her community, and she was known as a devoted mother that would do anything for her kids, that everything was about them. Marianne was still extremely close to her best friend Carrie, or Beth Hunt, Rocky's sister, and I'll just state this now. Beth got married to a man named Brian Suttles, and they had 3 children of their own. A son named Richard Ricky Suttles, and he was born in 1994. A daughter named Hannah Lee Suttles, and she was born in 2002. And way later in 2011, this couple had a second daughter who doesn't need to be named. But this is all important for you to know, so going back a bit, Marianne in the 2000s was struggling being a single mother. She volunteered on the board of the Pleasant Garden Community Center, which was initially to help her community. However, doing this work, Marianne met a married man named Randy Lamb who also worked on the board. What a sentence. But by about the year 2008, these two would start to have relations, and their relationship would last about 2.5 to 3 years. Now, I'll get into the relationship fully in a little bit, but things started to get really toxic in the year 2011. In February of 2011, Marianne's best friend Beth gave birth to her 3rd child, but right afterwards, she developed pneumonia and was hospitalized. Marianne was by Beth every step of the way, and Marianne promised if anything were to happen to Beth, that she'll take care of the children. Unfortunately, on March 9th of 2011, Carrie Beth Hunt Suttles passed away at the age of 35. Marianne decided to keep her word and stepped up right away to help raise Beth's children. The reason for this was because Beth's husband, Brian, was apparently struggling badly himself at the time with substance abuse issues. Not only this, but there was alleged domestic violence against him, so it was best to keep him away. After Beth died, Brian gave Marianne temporary custody of all 3 of their children for a year. This was 17-year-old Ricky, 8-year-old Hannah Lee, and baby Suttles, who was only a few weeks old. Though baby Suttles was set to be cared for by Marianne's daughter, Christina. Christina had just recently had her own baby, and so this arrangement would be much easier for Marianne. Both of the older children would move in with Marianne in late March of 2011, and there was also another teenager that came into the picture. Her name was Michaela Woods, and she was 15 years old. She wasn't related to Marianne by blood, but by marriage. Michaela was the child of one of Mary Ann's stepfather's siblings or relatives. So technically Michaela was Mary Ann's niece, and Michaela's parents were having marital issues and she needed a place to stay. Mary Ann brought her in with open arms, and by the middle of 2011, this house was full. You had a 36-year-old single mother, Mary Ann, with her 17-year-old son Dylan, her 14-year-old son Zach, her friend Beth's 17-year-old son Ricky, and her 8-year-old daughter Hannah Lee, and her 15-year-old niece Michaela. Mary Ann held this house together pretty well, and it was said that she went to all of the kids' events, specifically sports. Within a bit of time, Mary Ann's 17-year-old son began to have a relationship with her niece, Michaela. Once again, she was a niece by distant marriage, so these two weren't related at all. But regardless, Mary Ann didn't like this, and it caused issues within the home. It was stated by friends that Mary Ann just wanted to provide a safe and a stable home for these children. So first, before I get into Mary's affair, I'm going to talk a little bit about what else was going on. Mary Ann, at some point in 2011, had surgery on her thyroid, and I don't know why or when or how long she was out for, but I know it happened. Mary Ann was also dating another man named David Stokes, and this relationship started in March of 2011. Barely any information is out there about it. Regardless, in late 2010, the wife of Randy Lamb, or the guy who Mary Ann was dating and having an affair with, found out about this relationship. Her name was Jennifer, and in February of 2011, Jennifer got a restraining order against Mary Ann. She claimed that Mary Ann wouldn't stop calling, texting, emailing, and just harassing their family. Mary Ann was apparently sending emails of nude photos of herself to them and also to their home address. Jennifer also claimed that Mary Ann kept showing up at places that her and Randy went to, and that she was trying to create a sense of intimidation. Mary Ann, several months later in July of 2011, filed her own temporary restraining order against both Randy and Jennifer. In the affidavit, she claimed that Randy had called her dozens of times in a few days, and that he kept driving by her home, and something about a car that she was paying for or had to pay for. It's not very specific. I also don't know if Randy actually did that, though he might have. We'll talk about that later. But I do know that he was trying to reconcile with his wife at the time, and Mary Ann hated that. But Jennifer, Randy's wife, was very angry about this, and so she decided to sue Mary Ann for wrecking her marriage. This was allowed because in the state of North Carolina, spouses are allowed to sue the mistresses of their husbands. This is also known as an alienation of affection lawsuit. I believe the amount that Jennifer was suing Mary Ann for was about $250,000. Mary Ann had told friends around this time that she felt wrong with how the Lambs were treating her and that they were acting like everything was all her fault. Mary Ann also felt that if Jennifer won this lawsuit, that she would ruin her financially and that Mary Ann wouldn't be able to take care of her own children anymore, or Beth's. By late 2011, everything was crumbling down for Mary Ann. On Friday, November 18th of 2011, Mary Ann decided she wanted to try and get full custody of Beth's children. She went to the court and filed a petition for permanent custody of all of the children, and in the documents, she stated that Brian, Beth's husband, and that sending the kids back there would put them in danger. And she also said that the children were in counseling to help them with their mother's death. Mary Ann said that Brian was trying to remove the children from her, and he wanted to have them placed with his brother's family. So Mary Ann was now in multiple different lawsuits involving different aspects of her life. She felt like she was wronged in every corner. But the next day, on Saturday, November 19th of 2011, Mary Ann went to the grocery store and got a lot of food, stocking up for the week. She also went and met up with Randy Lamb, the man that she had an affair with, in a Walmart parking lot. During this meeting, Mary Ann gave Randy a $10,000 check, and investigators believed it was tied to trying to use that to pay off the lawsuit that Randy's wife had against her. Mary Ann requested that they meet again the next morning, or Sunday, November 20th, at the Guilford Technical Community College Aviation Center. Randy agreed, and later this day, Mary Ann would take her children, including the ones that she was taking care of, swimming with a family friend. This friend said that Mary Ann seemed a little bit tired, but overall, nothing appeared out of the ordinary. However, what she would do the next day was absolutely sickening. On Sunday, November 20th of 2011, Mary Ann Holder woke up with pure evil on her mind. Not long after awaking, she decided to write 2 notes that took responsibility for what she was about to do and also apologizing for it as well. These notes were never released, but in it Mary Ann blamed others and the world for her problems. After finishing that, Mary Ann grabbed a .32 caliber Smith & Wesson revolver. I don't know where or how she got the gun, but Mary Ann would then go to each person that was in the house and one by one shoot them. She shot and killed her 17-year-old son Robert Dylan Smith, who was sleeping in his bed. She did the same thing to her friend 17-year-old Beth's son, Ricky Suttles. Ricky was still alive afterwards, but comatose. Mary Ann then did the same thing to Beth's daughter, 8-year-old Hannah Lee. Hannah Lee was also still alive, but comatose. After that, Mary Ann went to her 15-year-old niece, Michaela Woods, who was in her bed, and Michaela actually woke up and these two sort of got in a small struggle. But sadly, Michaela suffered a gunshot wound to the head, and she was still alive, but comatose. Mary Ann's other son, 14-year-old Zachary Smith, was spending the night at a friend's home at the time. Mary Ann would then leave her home though, and if you remember before, she arranged a meeting with her former lover, 40-year-old Randy Lamb, in the parking lot at the Guilford Technical Community College's Aviation Center. This was just outside of Greensboro, North Carolina. Mary Ann arrived at some point in time, and at 8:52 a.m. is when Randy arrived. As soon as he did, Mary Ann pulled out a handgun and shot Randy and hit him twice. Luckily, he didn't get out of his truck and he was able to drive away, but he was injured. At about 8:55 a.m., Randy called his wife Jennifer and told her that Mary Ann shot him. Immediately, Jennifer called 911 to get Randy some help. At about 9:12 a.m., Randy would arrive home in Greensboro and first responders met him there. Paramedics then rushed him to the hospital and his wounds weren't life-threatening, but still serious. Right before he was taken into surgery, he identified Mary Ann Holder as the shooter, and he gave authorities her address in Pleasant Garden. When police arrived to her home, they feared that she was heading there, or other people could be in danger. They surrounded her home, but little did they know what had happened inside. Meanwhile, Mary Ann Holder wasn't heading back to her home, and in fact, at about 9:30 a.m. or so, she went to the friend's home where her son Zach stayed the night. Mary Ann picked up Zach, and Zach then sent a text message to his friend's family and thanked them for letting him spend the night. I believe at this point, Mary Ann started to drive back to her home in Pleasant Garden. At 10:11 a.m., a Guilford County deputy spotted Mary Ann's vehicle, which was a black Ford Explorer, on a road right near where Mary Ann lived. The deputy, with his gun drawn, started to approach the vehicle, and as he did, he heard 2 loud bangs and saw a little bit of smoke go off. The deputy then went up to the SUV, and inside they found Mary Ann deceased, and in the back seat they found her 14-year-old son Zach, who at the time was in critical condition. He was rushed to the hospital. Meanwhile, the police then entered Mary Ann's home and found a terrible scene. 3 of the victims were suffering greatly from wounds, and they were all taken to the hospital. The next day, on Monday, November 21st, 8-year-old Hannah Lee would succumb to her injuries. The day after that, on Tuesday, November 22nd of 2011, 14-year-old Zachary Smith succumbed to his injuries. And on Wednesday, November 23rd of 2011, both 15-year-old Michaela Lee Woods and 17-year-old Richard Suttles succumbed to their wounds. By this point, everyone that Mary Ann attacked had passed away, besides her estranged lover, Randy Lamb, who survived. This case was a terrible one, and there's a lot of questions that are left unanswered. Mary Ann seemed to be a great woman. She seemed to be a great mother. Literally by all accounts, except for from Jennifer and Randy Lamb, which from Jennifer is rightfully so, but Randy was involved too, so he can't say anything. People said that Mary Ann would have went to the end of the world for her children, that she would have done anything for them. Mary Ann also vowed to protect her best friend's children and did the literal exact opposite of that. Just a few days before this, she tried to get full custody of all of the children, citing that their father was dangerous and they'd be worse with him, and yet she herself was capable of doing something so heinous. Mary Ann did not protect those children, and what she did was disgusting. Why she did what she did isn't exactly stated, but we can assume that it had to do with all of the legal trouble she was in, and she was running away from her problems. It's very weird though, because the day before, it seems like she had a bit of intention, but not fully. She went to the grocery store and bought like $200 worth of food for the week, so I think if she did plan it, it wasn't very thought out and quickly done. Inside of her vehicle, police found another handgun, I don't know what kind, and they also found in a bag. That was never used, and police weren't exactly sure if it was even hers. They believed it to be, but Mary Ann didn't really use drugs. An autopsy was done, and they only found caffeine inside of her system. So essentially, Mary Ann was completely sober when all of this took place. An interesting thing that I found was that her boyfriend at the time, David Stokes, stated that Randy Lamb actually was harassing her during the summertime, and that he was there one time when it happened. David also had a bit to say after this occurrence, so I'll play that for you.
For the last 8 months, it's been a great 8 months, man. My family has been her family, and her family's been my family. I love those kids, man. They're the 5 of the best kids you'd ever want to meet. Really believed before all this happened, this was going to be the rest of my life. That's what it was going to be for the rest of my life. We'd already planned, me and Artie already talked about next year moving in together, and maybe starting a life together.
Christina, Mary Ann's daughter, who had a fiance and was also taking care of Beth's other daughter and her own daughter she just had, said that she doesn't know why Mary Ann did it, that she was a loving mother and that she was so much greater than that day. Rocky Smith, Mary Ann's ex-husband and the father of her children, said that his boys, Dylan and Zach, were amazing and that they would do anything for anybody, that sometimes he would walk by the boys' rooms and tell them he loves them as a form of healing, that life goes on and he can't give up. Rest in peace to all 5 innocent people that Mary Ann killed on that tragic day for zero reason whatsoever. Hannah Lee Suttles was 8 years old and a sweet-spirited 3rd grader at Pleasant Garden Elementary School. She was bright, resilient, athletic, and energetic. Hannah Lee loved to run and play and try new things, and she was a creative young girl. Her passions included singing and dancing and horseback riding. Hannah Lee enjoyed playing with makeup and going shopping, and she could spend hours in a clothing store as if she was an adult. Richard Ricky Suttles was 17 years old, and he was a high school senior. He was very bright and ambitious, and he was enrolled in an advanced early college program. He was also at the top of the class. He attended the early college at Guilford, which is a high school on the college campus for gifted kids. Ricky earned himself a full academic scholarship to High Point University and also planned to attend North Carolina State University to study mathematics and engineering. Ricky enjoyed playing basketball and lacrosse. He was super involved in church and something called the Royal Rangers, which is a church youth program similar to Boy Scouts. He received a prestigious award called the Gold Falcon, which showed his leadership traits. Ricky was a humble and compassionate guy. Michaela Lee Woods was 15 years old and a sophomore at Southeast Guilford High School. She lived in the Liberty, North Carolina area and was known for her bright and outgoing spirit. At school, Michaela was someone who loved to perform. She danced and sang and loved to go shopping. Michaela always had a smile on her. She had a nurturing side to her and loved children and spending time to care for younger kids. Michaela embraced the outdoors and adventure, going on trips to the lake, water sports, riding ATVs, etc. Michaela was described as a fun-loving girl who was full of life, and she was also in a relationship with Dylan. Zachary Smith was 14 years old and a freshman at Southeast Guilford High School. By all accounts, Zach was a gentle and friendly guy who was well-liked and sociable. He was best friends with a kid named Nick Couch. That was whose house he spent the night over. In fact, I think the Couches are who Mary Ann and the kids went swimming with the day before. But Zach was remembered by teachers as being a polite student with a good sense of humor, someone who got along with everyone. Zach was interested in technology and video games. He loved playing basketball and riding his bike. Zach was known for his easygoing, kind nature. Robert Dylan Smith was 17 years old and a protective big brother over Zach. He was described as being mature beyond his years and wise, that he constantly gave his all to everyone. Dylan had technically dropped out of school, but he was pursuing an online education through Ashworth University. He was a senior at the time. He planned to enroll at Southeast Guilford High School in January of 2012 though, so he could graduate with his friends as he was a part of the class of 2012. Dylan's life revolved around sports and doing things for others. He loved UNC and cheered on every team they had. Dylan had a huge thing for baseball. In fact, he actually began working as a youth baseball umpire at the Pleasant Garden Community Center, the same place Mary Ann met Randy. But Dylan was remembered by his generosity and leadership traits. He was going to enlist in the US Marine Corps after high school, and this just shows the man he was becoming. Rest in peace to all 5 of these souls that were brutally taken from this world for zero reason whatsoever by someone who vowed to protect them. What a shame.